everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be reacting to the CNN news conference with Epstein survivors. If you are about those raw, honest reactions, you found the right place. I'm Indigo Moon, and here we dive into everything from the latest reaction videos and social commentary to breaking news events and so much more. You never know what's coming next, just know it's going to be real, fun, and full of surprises. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel if you enjoy this type of content. Alright, so let's get started with the video. Alright guys, so the video today I'm going to be reacting to is by CNN. I'll post the link in the description for the video. The video was a news conference that included the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse and their attorneys, Representative Ro Khanna from California, Democrat, Thomas Massie from Kentucky, Republican, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Georgia Republican. And they're calling for more transparency, and they were urging Congress to vote to release the full files. These lawmakers are attempting to force a vote on a bill that would compel the Justice Department to release the files. Massey outlined that the petition needs the support of 2 more Republicans, but House GOP leaders have called the move unnecessary and trying to offer an alternative vote to continue the House Oversight Committee's investigation. And they are the committee that had released over 30,000 pages of documents from the Epstein case. So the news conference is pertaining to this call of action to Congress. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start the video.
Good morning. My name is Anushka DeGiorgio, and I stand before you today as a survivor of both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. I want to thank Congressmen Massie and Khanna for their role in putting together this very, very important bill. Every day of this journey toward healing has come at a profound cost to my mental health. But I am here. I chose to come because this bill really matters. I speak today not only in service of my own recovery from trauma inflicted by Maxwell and Epstein, but to honor the lives, the courage and sacrifices of Virginia Giuffre, Caroline Andriano, and others who could not continue. Their voices mattered. Their stories must not be forgotten. Accountability is what makes a society civilized. Equal opportunity and equal consequence for all. Consequences are not about punishment alone. They exist to deter future harm, to protect vulnerable, and to set a standard of justice. If Ghislaine Maxwell were pardoned, it would undermine all the sacrifices I made to testify and make mockery of mine and all survivors' suffering. That is why the Epstein Files Transparency Act is so essential. It requires the Department of Justice release all the records related to Epstein and Maxwell investigations, flight logs, immunity deals, internal communications, and even the records surrounding Epstein's detention and death. And crucially, it forbids withholding documents simply because of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. This is about ending secrecy wherever abuse of power takes root. But transparency alone is not enough. Survivors need protection, resources, and legal support. If this Congress is serious about justice, then let this moment also affirm your commitment to provide victims with the legal aid they need to confront abusers, to navigate complex systems, and to reclaim their power. Transparency must be matched by support, or else too many victims will remain silent out of fear and lack of access. The statistics demand action. Nearly 1 in 5 women in America will experience rape or attempted rape in her lifetime. Every 74 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted. Every 9 minutes, that person is a child. These are not numbers, they are people. They are your daughters, your sons, your constituents, your friends. Statistically, 1 in 5 of your families will face this nightmare. The days of sweeping this under the rug are over. We, the survivors, say no more. I want to help create a world where survivors of sexual abuse and abuse of power can come forward safely. And I ask Congress to join me in that effort. not only by passing this bill, but by ensuring that those who stepped forward have legal support to face their abusers and see justice done. When Judge Berman gave Epstein survivors the chance to finally speak, the world listened. After so many years, survivors were heard. That moment was historic, and so is this moment. For me, the turning point was when I had my daughter, and on the day she was born, I knew I had a responsibility to protect her and to protect all children. I have to use my voice, the voice that had been silenced by fear and shame for so many years. Make no mistake, my polished exterior is a shield hiding a wound that still bleeds. But through this wound, I have found purpose. To be part of lasting change in how we confront exploitation and abuse. And to be clear, the only motive for opposing this bill would be to conceal wrongdoing. You have a choice. Stand with the truth, or with the lies that have protected predators for decades. I am no longer weak. I am no longer powerless. And I'm no longer alone. And with your vote, neither will the next generation be. President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation. Please use that influence and power to help us, because we need it now and this country needs it now. Thank you.
All right, so I did a little bit of research on some of the women that spoke at this news conference. If you guys would like for me to do a video on these women, they have an incredible story. And so I would be definitely interested in making that video. So comment below if you guys would like to see that video. All right, now back to Anushka has an incredible story. She is the first survivor of Epstein. She came from an affluent family in London, and she was a model when she met him. And so being from this affluent family is how she started running into the same circle of people that Epstein was into, which is one of his many tactics in procuring these young ladies. Anushka, I really sympathize and empathize with these women, because as a survivor myself of child SA abuse and the R word, I know the feeling of being too afraid to speak up. A lot of times, I would say probably most of the time, your abuser is taking advantage of their power, right? That's why we have terms like abuse of power. These women were being abused by the most powerful. So I can't even imagine the terror that they have been living in, because I know for myself how scared I was, and this wasn't a person of any influence. They just were able to gaslight me and brainwash me into believing that they had so much more power than they did. These individuals that they're dealing with actually have that type of power, so it's gotta be terrifying. So I commend all the women for coming forward, and this Transparency Act that she's speaking about is so important, because it has everything supposedly that is in those files, like she was talking about the flight logs and things like that. And I believe that information is important, especially for them. And I agree that politics shouldn't play a part in this. And I've seen it, and it's absolutely disgusting. I have seen how in the beginning, when the Epstein cases were first coming up, it really seemed like the left and the Democrats were just defending him, almost saying that these women were liars, basically. I didn't really hear anything from the other side until it became a good talking point for elections and votes, right? Then it seemed like the Republicans cared. And now that they got the power that they wanted, it's almost like the flipped, right? Now it's the Republicans that are saying that it's a hoax, and it's the Democrats that are calling for this transparency, right? So politics are just so dirty, and that's why politics needs to stay out of this, because what's important here is the people that had committed these crimes should be held accountable. The rest of us lowly servants here have to. Why don't they? Her coming out and speaking out like that and finding that strength as a mother is something I can relate to, because I began to find my own voice as well when I became a mother. That judge giving these women the opportunity to speak is so important, because I've watched a couple of commentaries from this news conference, and it just seems like a lot of people right now, and understandably so because of the Me Too movement, don't want to believe these women or want to believe that they're exaggerating, or they think they do. Maybe it's not that they want to believe that, it's that they think that they are lying, they think that they're exaggerating, whatever the case might be, right? But it all stems from so many Me Too hoaxes.
Hello. My name is Annie Farmer, and I was 16 years old when I was flown to New Mexico to spend a weekend with Epstein and Maxwell. That same year, 1996, my sister, Maria Farmer, reported what happened to me there, along with reporting her own assault at their hands and their theft of sensitive photos of herself, of me, and our younger sister that she had taken for her work as a figurative painter. I am now 46 years old. 30 years later, we still do not know why that report wasn't properly investigated, or why Epstein and his associates were allowed to harm hundreds, if not thousands, of other girls and young women. We have never been told whether those images were found when they discovered a large amount of child sexual abuse material on his property. As a psychologist, I understand that when the systems meant to protect us recreate the abuse cycle, the betrayal that occurs can be just as damaging as the original trauma. This happens when survivors of these crimes are not believed, when our well-being is not weighed as heavily as those who have more resources or more privilege, and when perpetrators of these crimes are given a platform rather than the survivors of them. For so many years, it felt like Epstein's criminal behavior was an open secret. Not only did many others participate in the abuse, it is clear that many were aware of his interest in girls and very young women and chose to look the other way because it benefited them to do so. They wanted access to his circle and his money. Their choice to align with his power left those of us who had been harmed by this man and his associates feeling very isolated. I could never have imagined being here today and this chorus of support that we have all received. I have been sent so many notes and messages from people with no direct connection to this case who've expressed their solidarity with us. And I believe that is because, in part, as Anushka explained so well, this is an extremely widespread issue of child sexual abuse, of sexual exploitation, of sexual violence. This affects almost every family in some way. From my conversations with women in these last few days and from all of the support that we've received, it's very clear to me that we are not going away, we are not going to be quiet, and we are not going to give up. And I ask the American public to stand with us and not give up. At a time with record high levels of distrust in our institutions and a perception that there are two Americas, one for those with power and privilege and one for everyone else, passing this Epstein transparency bill is one important step that can be taken to prove to Americans that the government does not side with sexual perpetrators. A thorough public review of this information is an important step in preventing the type of systemic failures that have occurred in this case and harmed all of us. An important step towards healing for those involved. Thank you.
Annie Farmer also has an incredible story. Annie Farmer and her sister, two of the survivors' stories that were part of the Netflix documentary that came out some years ago. And I watched it, and if you have seen it as well, I mean, tell me in the comments below. It shook me to my core. There were so many times that I cried, and I'm not the kind of person that really cries during movies or documentaries, but their stories and the struggles that they went through and the Miami police and all the struggles they were going through. It's an incredible powerful story and a good watch for sure. But she, spoke when Annie said that these women know just as much as we do, and they were part of the cases, incredibly infuriates me. These women have a right to access to these records. They have a right to see, evidently was the information that was given in this trial. And them not being able to have access to that is an example of how much our system is broken, how much our system cares about money and influence more than they care about the people who are living and working this society. We are the people keeping this machine going, and if they expect us to follow their rules, then we should be expecting them to follow their own. And that's why this Transparency Act is so important and so pivotal, because it's a right step in the right direction of holding these people of influence accountable.
Hello everyone. I'd like to say thank you everyone for being here today on this very powerful and special day for all of us here. My name is Marina Lacerda. I was minor victim 1 in federal indictment of Jeffrey Epstein in New York in 2019. I was one of dozens of girls that I personally know who were forced into Jeffrey's mansion on 9 East 71 Street in New York City when we were just kids. Today is the first time that I ever speak publicly about what happened to me. I never thought that I would find myself here. The only reason that I am here is because it feels like the people who matter in this country finally care about what we have to say. As an immigrant from Brazil, I feel empowered knowing that the little girl struggling to get by at 14 and 15 years old finally has a voice. For the first time, I feel like I matter as an American. I was only 14 years old when I met Jeffrey. It was the summer of high school. I was working 3 jobs to try to support my mom and my sister when a friend of mine in the neighborhood told me that I could make $300 to give an older guy a massage. It went from a dream job to the worst nightmare. Jeffrey assistant Leslie Groff would call me and tell me that I needed to be at the house so often that I ended up dropping out of high school before 9th grade. And I never went back. From 14 to 17 years old, I went and worked for Jeffrey instead of receiving an education. Every day I hoped that he would offer me a real job as one of his assistants or something important. I would finally have made it big, as like we say, the American dream. That day never came. I had no way out. I was, until he finally told me that I was too old. There are many pieces of my story that I can't remember, no matter how hard I try. The constant state of wonder causes me so much fear and so much confusion. My therapist says that my brain is just trying to protect itself, but it's so hard to begin to heal knowing that there are people out there who know more about my abuse than I do. The worst part is that the government is still in possession right now of the documents and information about that could help me remember and get over all of this maybe and help me heal. They have documents with my name on them that were confiscated from Jeffrey Epstein's house and could help me put the pieces of my own life back together. But I don't have any of it. And I know the same is true for many of these women. We are here to support this bill today, not only for transparency, but for the American people. But if the government is going to release these documents to the public, describing the crimes committed by Jeffrey Epstein and others, the least that they can do is give me my documents that they have about me. The other survivors deserve the same respect from our government. While our identifying information must be redacted to the public, it is equally important to provide the victims themselves with unredacted information. I will never forget when the FBI agent showed up in my door in 2008. Jeffrey Epstein hired a lawyer to represent me or more like to represent him, I like to say. I couldn't ask any questions, and I had no idea what was going on. I was terrified. Until today, I think most of us are still terrified. I thought somebody was going to kill me. I thought something was going to happen to my sister or my mother. It went further out to even maybe thinking something would happen in Brazil with my family. And then one day, the lawyer said that everything was just gonna go away. Like nothing happened. I didn't need to testify. When I asked him why, he gave no explanation. That was it. So why? Why was I never called to testify then? We could have saved so many women. We could have saved so many lives from being abused. Why did he get away with it in 2008? Why was he able to go on in the abuse with hundreds of girls after the Florida investigation? Why didn't they let me testify to help stop him? Our government could have saved so many women, but Jeffrey Epstein was too important and those women didn't matter. Why? Well, we matter now. We are here today and we are speaking and we are not going to stop speaking. Today, I stand here with the women who have really helped me to find the strength to come out and come forward to share my story for the very first time. Together, we are stronger than ever. While she may not be with us, Virginia Roberts, we will continue to use our voices to strengthen yours always. Thank you.
So Marina, it's her first time coming out and speaking out. She is victim number 1 from the 2019 indictment, and she was only 14 years old when she met Jeffrey in New York. And so coming out today and speaking is so incredibly brave. I commend her for finding the strength to be able to do that. Also, even these women aren't able to see their own files is absolutely unacceptable. And she's absolutely right. We, the people, deserve the information, but they can redact the names of the victims. Of course, we don't need that specific information, just the information that it happened, right? They deserve everything, especially after what they've been through. This poor young woman had to deal with the FBI and attorneys not fighting for her side of it, just watching all of this happen and being completely helpless in all of it. And then after doing all of that and telling her, nah, we don't need you to testify, we got this. It's just another example of how broken this system is, how money, influence, and power can literally get you out of anything.
Hi, my name's Courtney Wild. I just wanted to take a second and just have a moment of silence for all the women survivors that aren't here with us today, that passed away due to anxiety, depression, trying to keep up with this case. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. My name is Courtney Wild. I was only 14 years old when I was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein by a 13-year-old friend of mine. The details of the abuse that he inflicted on me for years is not important today. In 2028, I was cooperating with the federal government in the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. They sent me a letter telling me to be patient because this was going to be a lengthy investigation, but at the same time, they refused to talk to me and tell me what was going on. So I hired an attorney, Brad Edwards, because I was hopeful to get some answers. When I walked into his office at 19 years old, Brad sued the government for refusing to tell me what was going on under the Crime Victims' Rights Act. The only reason anyone ever found out that the government had already given Jeffrey Epstein immunity through the non-prosecution agreement was because our lawsuit forced the government to tell us. Otherwise, nobody would even know that today. Sometimes it's hard to believe that I had to sue the United States just to learn that my abuser was given immunity. I started as Jane Doe, but I decided I was proud enough to take on our country, and I was on the right side of history. We fought the government for 10 years to prove that the government violated our rights as crime victims in the crime victims' rights in order to protect a pedophile. We had to win the 11th Circuit Court appeals to force the government to turn over thousands of pages of emails between Jeffrey Epstein and the government. Those emails provided the proof that the government worked very hard with Jeffrey Epstein to violate our rights. Why? Why did the government work so hard to protect Jeffrey and not so hard to protect me and my other innocent friends? Why was Jeffrey so important to the government, and why was I so insignificant? Why did nobody but our lawyers care before now? It seems people have only started to care because of Twitter and politics. But I would like to say this has nothing to do with politics. This is not a blue thing or a red thing. This is an everyone thing. We can all agree on this. The injustice that has happened here. Multiple, over and over. Everybody that talks about this just seems to make it worse. We need transparency. It's time for us to see beyond the curtain. Why was Jeffrey Epstein so protected? Who is still being protected? And who protected them all, so the world can understand how Jeffrey was able to abuse so many of us for so long. I was lucky to have Brad Edwards, Brittany Henderson, and Paul Cassell take on my case pro bono and fight fearlessly over 20 years' time. I would like to thank them, and I'd also like to ask the Trump administration to please sign off on the Crime Victims' Rights Reformed Act, the Courtney Wild Crime Victims' Rights Reformed Act that's we're trying to get passed here so we can close the loopholes in the CVRA case that Epstein's attorney used to their benefit to get away with this. Thank you so much.
Courtney Wild also has an incredible story. All her activism in everything that she has done to empower victims, it's just amazing. She was also 14 when she met Epstein in West Palm Beach, and she had to bring a case against the US government to release records that was entitled to be released to her through the Victims Act. And the fact that they had to do this, and in her story is so incredible because you hear about how much red tape and bureaucratic bullshit they had to go through to get where they got to even have this information released so that we would all know that he got this sweetheart deal, because they kept that so hush-hush. And we have Courtney Wild to thank for that she put herself out there like that and her attorneys kept going. That in itself is incredible, because many attorneys will not take a case if it's going to cost them too much resources and time. They want to make their money and make it quick. They don't want these complicated cases. So I commend them as well for their activism in taking her case. But I would also like to know, why was he given immunity? Why was he so important? Why was he so powerful to the US government? After all that information they had to bring all these charges against him, they didn't. I think it'd be interesting to know, and imagine that it is in those files that they don't want to release.
Good morning. First and foremost, we want to extend our deepest gratitude to Brad and Brittany Edwards, Congressman Massey and Kana, and above all, the brave survivors who have entrusted us with the privilege of speaking today on behalf of Virginia. Robert Jeffrey, as her family. We are here today because we support H.Res.581, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, in its entirety. But as much as this bill is about shining a light on truth, it's not just about the bill. This is about justice. This is about survivors. This is about justice against the rich and powerful who have stolen something from these women and many children at the time, their freedom. The freedom to live their life without mental and physical scars that have been inflicted upon them by those who thought they were untouchable. The same freedom that these monsters took from these survivors, they should never be afforded. They should never be allowed to continue their lives with impunity. Let's be clear. This is not a political issue. This is not about left or right. This is about humanity. This is about doing what's right. And this is about ensuring that the future we leave behind isn't one where the powerful can hide behind their wealth, their influence, and their money to evade justice. Our plea to you, whether you're a dad, a mom, a brother, or a sister, look your young ones in the face, look them in the eye, and tell them you didn't stand against the very people who raped, molested, and preyed upon children and young women. Tell them you were willing to negotiate a deal. Money should never be what makes something right or wrong. If you vote no, your stance will be clear. You will be choosing to stand on the side of the rich and powerful, allowing money to buy your way out of the consequence. But here's my one ask. Look these survivors in the eye and tell them why. Then, look the people of the United States in the eye and tell them why. And then, when you're alone, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself why. Virginia said it best, and I quote, "I have physical and mental scars that will never heal. I have memories that will never go away. They say time can heal, but this won't. Not until the justice system makes an example out of these people with so-called privileges. I just call it money. The only time I can begin to heal is when their freedom is taken from them, just like they did to me and literally thousands of other victims. The survivors of this horrific abuse are watching. The American people are watching. And history is watching. Which side will you be on?" Thank you.
Virginia also has an incredible story, a story of a survivor that, to the best of her ability, tried to overcome and move beyond past the traumas of her abuse to help others who were also going through the same thing, and to help those who haven't yet, and to stop these types of crimes from happening. So Virginia has a history of working with different nonprofits, especially those that help victims. And unfortunately, Virginia passed away in April of this year from suicide. I want to take a moment to honor her, thank her for all the work that she did to help victims and child victims. I can't imagine the horror and the terror that she had to live with, and I hope that she found peace. But Virginia's story, and especially Virginia's death, is an example of why we need this Transparency Act to go through, why we need all these files to be released. The victims deserve the right to close this chapter in their lives, and if they feel they're not able to do so without these files, then our government has a responsibility to give them those files so that finally close this book and move forward with their lives. And we the people have a right to know why this predator was protected by our government.
Hello, my name is Jenna Lisa Jones, and I was only 14 years old when my friend brought me over to Jeffrey Epstein's house in Palm Beach in 2003. I had a terrible home life, but I was such an innocent kid then. I always did my best in school, and I had such a positive outlook on life. Until that day that I met Jeffrey, I have never been more scared in my life than I was that first time that he hurt me. I remember crying the entire way home, thinking about how I couldn't ever tell anyone about what actually happened in that house. This guy was so rich and had so many pictures with so many famous people, and no one would have ever believed me if I told them. I want to thank Congressman Rowe and Congressman Thomas Massey for having me here today. It was really hard for me to find my voice and to become strong enough to speak about my abuse. I didn't come forward until 2019, and even then it was like I was afraid of a ghost. I know that I was just a little kid, but sometimes I still feel like it is my fault that this happened. Being given the opportunity to speak at the United States Capitol building about something that is so important, not just to me and the women before you, but to the entire country. Together, we can finally make a change. And that is thanks to the people like these two congressmen and their teams who actually care about the victims. If you are a member of Congress and you are listening to all of us speak here today, please really listen to us. Please vote for this bill to be passed. Please recognize how important it is for transparency relating to Jeffrey Epstein. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, this does not matter. This is not about sides. You are an American and you are a person who has chosen to serve in an elected position to stand up for those you represent who cannot always stand up for themselves. We are those people. We are the Americans that you promised to protect. And we need your help. Please, President Trump, pass this bill and help us. Make us feel like our voices are finally being heard. Thank you.
I don't really have a lot of information on Jenna Lisa, but I do know that she is a survivor, that probably one of the later ones to come out. Like she said, she didn't come out with her story until 2019, but in that time she has done much activism work and interviews talking about her trauma.
Good afternoon. My name is Haley Robson. I was a 16-year-old high school student athlete who made good grades and had high aspirations for college when I was recruited and asked by a classmate of mine alongside with a 20-year-old male if I wanted to give an old rich guy a massage. But what high school girl would not want to do that? That day changed my life forever. And when I got into the massage room, Jeffrey Epstein undressed and asked me to do things to him. My eyes welled up with tears, and I have never been more scared in my life. When it was over, he paid me $200 and requested in exchange that I bring a girl each time to make another $200. I told him I did not want to do that, and then he gave me an ultimatum. Either you come here and massage me when I call you, or you bring me friends of yours to massage, and I will give you $200 per girl for each time she comes. I felt and hoped to never hear from him again, but he called me every day. He was so wealthy and powerful, and he would not let me go. I felt I had no choice. If I disobeyed him, I knew something bad would happen. So knowing I did not want to be sexually abused, I started to bring him other girls from my high school, and he paid me $200 for bringing them. I just hoped each time it would be the last time. One day, the stepmom of one of the girls brought him and called the police on Jeffrey Epstein. The police then called me in for questioning. I had told them the truth despite the fact that I was a teenager and a minor, and I was able to tell the police the names of all the other victims. The police treated me like a criminal. I had, by this time, had turned 18. I had been with Jeffrey since I was 16 and for 2 years. So they had told me So they told me I was going to be arrested. My name was then distributed to the press as a co-conspirator of my abuser, who I detested. My entire world was crashing in around me, and I started being threatened and bullied, till this day still receiving death threats. I was singled out and for many years had to suffer a smear campaign of lies about me because of the way that I was portrayed by the press. The press made me out to be a predator when I was just a 16-year-old little girl who was sexually abused by a powerful man and an evil man. For years, I had no friends. My boyfriend was murdered, and there was nowhere to turn. The government, after investigating more, learned that I was true a victim, but the damage was done and it was too late. There was no way to undo the harm the press had caused me. In 2019, I met Brad Edwards and Brittany Henderson. They changed my life and they believed in me and have helped me to finally heal. Healing is a process, and I may never get there. But the passage of this bill requiring the government to produce all the evidence that it has gathered on Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell is a huge component of healing for me and for the many other women who have suffered for so long. For many reasons. First, we and the rest of the world need answers. Why was he so protected? And why didn't anyone ever care to stop him? It doesn't take a brain surgeon to know that if he is spending thousands of dollars a day paying high school girls he abuses and had a lot of access to cash. I learned through my attorneys in the JP Morgan class action case that there were years when his staff withdrew over $1 million in cash a year. Was that not a big enough red flag? There were wire transfers to other victims, and the government did not protect us. The banks did not protect us. So lift the curtain on these files and be transparent. Every single time a new conspiracy gets circulated in the media, whether he is still alive, what powerful person had him murdered, who was on the Epstein client list, and there are names going around on TikTok and Instagram, we, the survivors, are suffering severely. We take our kids to school and everyone is talking about it. We can't read the news or do anything without hearing crazy stories that are only able to live on because the government continues to hide the evidence and the truth. So people just make up stories. Those stories hurt. They hurt real people who have already been hurt. And we have lost so many Epstein victims to suicide, and maintaining the real truth in secrecy only allows for conspiracy theorists to tell lies that drives up our anxiety and fears and will continue to lead to more pain, more suffering, and honestly, more deaths of innocent victims. It's time you do is right by us. Unseal all the documents. We are requesting transparency, and I am requesting every congressman and woman that goes against this bill be outed. I want to know. Thank you.
I know I'm going to end up saying this again, and it could be turned into a drinking game at this point, but Haley also has such an incredible story, and I keep saying it because it's true. All these women that came out today, and the many more that have come out but were not at this press conference, are so brave for sharing their story, and they're such a wonderful example of survivors overcoming to the best of their ability their abuse, taking that negative experience and doing something wonderful with it. Many of these women have done so much advocacy work. And like I said, I think earlier in the video, if you guys want me to do a video on each of these women, I will definitely do that because they have such an incredible story that should be heard and should be praised. But with Haley, she was also in that Netflix documentary, and she was known as a quote-unquote recruiter, which I absolutely hate that title for her because she was a child at the time. I think she was also maybe between 14 and 16 when Epstein met her and had her acquiring girls from her local school. And this woman in her story, if you've seen the Netflix documentary, it is so baffling how the authorities treated her like she was somehow like part of this ring that he had going, right? And she was just as much of a victim, and so are all these other so-called recruiters. These were little girls that were put in an impossible situation. Either you allow me to abuse you or you bring me girls to abuse. That's absolutely awful and disgusting, and this man got away with that. It's just so incredibly baffling. But when she was talking about the internet conspiracies, I do understand what she's saying. All these people coming out with all these crazy conspiracy theories, they're only hurting these women. And I don't think many of them even care whether they're hurting these women. They want the views and the money from the views, which is absolutely disgusting in itself. She's right. These type of conspiracies are fueled because the government is refusing to give us the information. I mean, now our president, who ran on release the Epstein records, has now totally flipped to the other side and is calling it a Democratic hoax, making it a political thing. And I agree with all these women. It shouldn't be about politics, but it should be about how the government, in this time period that we're talking about, 20-something years, we have had both sides of the political party in power, different times, different people, for extended periods of time, and nobody did anything. So it's not just a red or blue, it's in all of them. And I didn't even think about how the banks would also maybe be complicit complicit, I guess you could say, in it, because it is suspicious to have that type of money moving. And I don't know, I'm not a banker, and I definitely don't work with affluent clients like he was, so maybe that really is nothing. They were complicit in a lot of these actions. I think they had at least some knowledge of what was going on with that money, and they didn't do anything about it. And I think that we need to shake up the whole system. We need everyone that was involved in helping this man, whether knowingly or unknowingly, should be held accountable for it. Because I'm telling you, if he was not this powerful person, this affluent person that he was, he would have already been in prison for this. So the fact that it took them even so long to bring a case against him, he ends up getting immunity. They bring another case against him, finally get him, and then, well, we all know the end of his story, right? But in the end, these women have a right to those records. We have a right to know what happened as well, and we need to keep pushing for that.
Hi there, my name is Lisa Phillips, and I'm the host of a award-nominated podcast called From Now On, a platform supporting survivors. I want to thank all of my survivor sisters who came before me today. I'll be very short. In the year 2000, I was taken to Jeffrey Epstein's island while on a photo shoot on a nearby island. Who I saw and what I experienced there was a glimpse into a very dark and disturbing world. For years after, I tried to avoid Jeffrey, but he had introduced me to Katie Ford, the owner of the Ford modeling agency. Epstein's reach went to the very top of fashion, arts, and entertainment. This did not just happen to underage girls in Florida. In New York City, hundreds of young, ambitious women were abused by him. Epstein was not just a serial predator, he was an international human trafficker. And many around him knew, many participated, and many profited. And yet, he was protected. So I stand here today for every woman who has been silenced, exploited, and dismissed. We are not asking for pity. We are here demanding accountability, and I'm demanding justice. Congress must choose. Will you continue to protect predators, or will you finally protect survivors? And also, I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know, who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details.
You know, I'm gonna say Lisa also has an incredible story. She has a podcast called From Now On, and the podcast is about her story, her life, especially in the time period that she knew Epstein, and just general SA and abuse topics. She brings a lot of awareness through her story. So she is an incredible example, again, of a survivor that was able to overcome her circumstance and then be able to create a platform and use that platform to be able to not only share the horrors of her story, but to bring awareness that these things are happening. Everybody likes to pretend that they don't, but it does. And it happens in the shadowy parts of our society, and it's happening right in our face. Knowing that she was a model when she met him, and she was a model for Ford, which is a huge modeling company. I mean, I think they're also an international agency, so Ford is huge, very well known, reputable, respected, and this type of person was able to weasel his way in there and meet powerful people to have access to these poor young women. And another example, Jenna Lisa was talking about the banks. Lisa here is speaking about the fashion and entertainment industry. I mean, this was infiltrated into every aspect of our society.
Hello, my name is Shantae Davies, and I'm here before you today as a survivor of decades of pain, trauma, and betrayal at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and the people who enabled them, and a government that for far too long refused to help. In 2002, I was living in California, a young woman with high aspirations of becoming an actress. I was already beginning to make a name for myself in the industry. A person I trusted, someone I thought was a friend, invited me to meet a powerful woman who could help advance my career. That woman happened to be Ghislaine Maxwell. I was asked to give her a massage, though I had almost no experience, and when I did, she praised me and promised introductions to someone enormously powerful, someone who could change the course of my life, and that man was Jeffrey Epstein. At first, I was an excited young woman on top of the world. Epstein flew me to his private island. He listened to my dreams, promised to help, but his promises came with a catch. The abuse began. He told me to keep it secret. He manipulated me with quid pro quo I did not consent to, but I felt I had no one to turn to. He was too powerful. I was just one of the many young women trapped in his orbit. I was even taken on a trip to Africa with former President Bill Clinton and other notable figures. In those moments, I realized how powerless I was. If I spoke out, who would believe me? Who would protect me? Epstein himself was the most powerful leader of our country. Epstein surrounded himself, with the most powerful leaders of our country and the world. He abused not only me, but countless others, and everyone seemed to look away. The truth is, Epstein had a free pass. He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump. It was his biggest brag, actually. And while what I endured will haunt me forever, I live every day with PTSD. I live as a mother trying to raise my child while distrusting a world that has betrayed me. This kind of trauma never leaves you. It breaks families apart. It shapes the way we see everyone around us. But one thing is certain, unless we learn from this history, monsters like Epstein will rise again. There are files, government files, that hold the truth about Epstein, who he knew, who owed him, who protected him, and why he was allowed to operate for so long without consequence. Why was Maxwell the only one held accountable when so many others played a role? Why does the government hide this information from the public? This secrecy is not protection, it's complicity. And as long as the truth is buried, justice will remain out of reach. That is why this bill matters. Passing it will, bless you, ensure that the suffering of survivors is not in vain. Passing it will bring accountability, transparency, and prevention. It will help protect the next generation of predators who seek to place themselves above the law through wealth, influence, and connections. This is not just my story. It is about every survivor who carries invisible scars. It's about the weight we live with daily. It is about the families broken and the futures stolen. So I ask you, President Trump and members of Congress, why do we continue to cover up sexual abuse and assault? Who are we covering for? Let the public know the truth. We cannot heal without justice. We cannot protect the future if we refuse to confront the past. Thank you.
You know I'm gonna say it. Shantae also has an amazing story. She met him when she was 21 years old. Shantae is an actress. She's been in movies like Feast and The Hangover, and she was also in the Netflix documentary and the other documentary called Surviving Jeffrey Epstein. And so she has done so much activism work by sharing her story. She is an incredible person for coming out, and I'm gonna start getting redundant here, but like she said, he had many powerful friends, including our current president. We can get into a whole long thing about it, but I won't. But it does sit with people, especially his voters, the wrong way. When you were running, you completely acknowledge these files. And going so far to the left with it now, in calling it a hoax, it's just kind of mind-blowing how that all happened in itself. But I can do a video on that too if you guys want. Let me know in the comments. It was incredible incredibly brave for these women and Virginia's brother to come out and hold this press conference and to share parts of their story and why it's so important for this Transparency Act to go through. I really hope that Congress heard them and they can get the votes that they need so that they can get the peace and closure that they need, and we can finally get the truth of what happened in this case. That's why all these conspiracies get so crazy and out of hand, and it would just calm it all down if they would just tell us the truth. I think the truth is so horrible. It involves so many industries and facets that run our society that it would literally cause chaos. But I don't care. They did this to themselves. Associating with this man, participating in those acts, you should be held accountable, and money shouldn't matter and influence shouldn't matter. You should be held to an even higher standard than the rest of us lowlies over here, because you do have power and influence. And maybe you're not deserving of that if you're going to be acting like this. Alright, that's going to wrap up today's reaction. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and make sure that you hit the thumbs up button and drop a comment below with your thoughts. What do you think of the video? What do you think of my opinions? Did I miss something? Is there something that you would like to add to? I'd love to know. Also, let me know if you guys want a video on these women. I would be incredibly happy to do it and to share their story. Also, I am planning the next video. These women did an interview, I believe it was with NBC, and Virginia's brother was there as well. Look out for the next video, and if you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss my reactions. Thanks, guys.